Okay, so the news reports say that 18 states are going to raise the minimum wage. And you know what? I'm going to lay some truth on you. I realize there are a whole bunch of people who don't care about truth. And there are so many people in this country now who have been indoctrinated into a Marxist communist economic ideology that is flawed to the very core, and that is why every socialist and communist nation always crumbles. So, nonetheless, now the minimum wage folk are going to get a raise in a bunch of states, and this is basically what you're going to see happen. Within the next year or two, a whole bunch of them will be replaced by kiosks, and we will have tens of thousands of jobs lost as a result of the minimum wage hike. And a bunch of politicians will still convince you that that minimum wage hike was just a wonderful thing. Meanwhile, what's going to happen is that minimum wage earners will lose buying power to the point that what you can afford to pay for now, you won't be able to afford to pay for. Give it a year or two, and you will not be able to afford what you can afford right now. Because that's the way the economy works. In part because a large chunk of what you're going to make now, the increase, guess what? It's not covered by any tax deductions. It's not covered by anything. $12,000, thanks to Donald Trump, $12,000 of what you make on minimum wage is instantly written off in the standard deduction. That means your first $12,000 a year is tax-free. And if you're a couple, then $24,000 a year is tax-free. That's a nice and wonderful thing. But now you're going to add to that extra income, and that extra income is going to get taxed to the fullest degree. That means that politicians in another year or two get to say, hey, look, we have balanced the budget because we've increased the amount of money coming into the state. Oh, yeah, that's the only reason that there are people who support the raising of minimum wage. Because let me tell you what raising minimum wage does. It puts a whole lot more money into the state and basically takes money out of your pockets and takes away your buying power, like I just said. But what else does it do? It costs thousands of jobs for people who are minimum wage earners. For that guy who's been working 2-3 years of his life trying to build a business 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, who finally gets to the point where maybe he could hire somebody for $5 an hour. Well, guess what? That's against the law, so he can't do it. Not to mention all of the government requirements say that he can't do it anyway, because he's got to spend a bunch of that money on this and on that and on the other thing. And therefore, the basic undercapitalized entrepreneur who has the tiny business that could thrive dies because the government says, oh no, you can't do that. You gotta spend this money on this and that. Plus, you can't hire somebody for $5 an hour. It doesn't matter that they would be happy to help you with your business. They would be happy to work for $5. They'd be happy to have that job and grow the business with you so they could eventually grow their income with you. But nope, can't happen. So that group of people, that business guy who maybe has 3 or 4 employees will now have 2. The business guy who has 5 employees and can actually afford to leave the state, he'll pick up his business and move somewhere else where he can afford to keep those employees. Raising the minimum wage is silly nonsense. If we had leaders who would just sit down with business owners and say, hey, do you think you could pay the people that work for you more? Believe it or not, that could work. You know, it's worked with, Starbucks and Costco and a few other companies have just decided to raise the minimum wage. But other companies are not going to do it. Companies that have millions of places and millions of employees, you're talking about a huge hit. Why not replace those employees with automation? And then that way you don't have to worry about it. If you're running a McDonald's and right now you're putting out $2 million in money and payroll, and you can put in a kiosk that won't even cost you as much as a minimum wage worker costs you in a year, but you can run it for 4, 5, 6 years. That, my friends, is good economics. Minimum wage is not going to help minimum wage workers. There are enough economists out there that have already said it. We already know that it's true. Every time minimum wage goes up, inflation goes up, the economy's baseline, just raises. Everything gets more expensive. Because you have more money in your pockets, they can charge more money for stuff. Sometimes things don't get priced at a true value because the American people who need to buy it can't afford it. But guess what? More money in your pocket means those prices can go up. The more money in your pocket means prices have to go up to cover the more money in your pocket, because corporations are not going to lose money. They're just going to increase prices, and they can because you're making more money. It's a vicious cycle, and you, the minimum wage worker, are in the midst of it. So hey, go get some education, go find a different job, go whatever. You want to make more money? Go out and prove to somebody that you're actually worth more money. If you can't prove to somebody you're worth more money, then you ought not to get paid more money. All right, there's just a few thoughts for you on the idea of raising the minimum wage.